At some point in your 40s, almost everyone has this moment. You sit down, you finally look at your numbers seriously, and something doesn't feel right. Because on paper, you've done what you were supposed to do, you've worked, you've earned more than you did in your 20s, maybe you've even saved when you could. But when you look at your total savings, it doesn't look like what you thought it would. And that's when the thought hits. Am I behind? Because according to most of the benchmarks you see online, the average 45-year-old is behind. Not by a little, by about $265,000. But here's where things get interesting. That number is real. And at the exact same time, it can also be completely misleading. Because depending on which data you look at, that gap can look massive or it can almost disappear. Same country, same age group, same year. Completely different conclusions. And that raises a much bigger question. Are people actually falling that far behind? Or are we measuring progress using a system that was never designed for real life? In this video, I'm going to break this down in a way that most people never see. We're going to look at where that $265,000 gap actually comes from, why it feels so much bigger than it is for some people, and more importantly, why even people who do hit the right number still end up feeling behind. Because the real issue here isn't just how much you've saved, it's how you're measuring it. And once you see the difference, you might look at your entire financial situation in a completely different way. So let's actually look at where this $265,000 gap comes from. Because once you see the numbers side by side, you'll understand why so many people feel like they're falling behind. Most of the expectations people see come from simple benchmarks. Things like, by your mid-40s, you should have around 4 times your annual income saved. Sounds reasonable. Until you translate that into real numbers. The average income for someone in their mid-40s is roughly around $85,000 to $95,000 a year. So using that benchmark, you're expected to have somewhere between $340,000 to $380,000 saved by age 45. Now, let's compare that to reality. When you look at actual data across the population, the typical 45-year-old doesn't have anywhere near that. In fact, most fall somewhere closer to $100,000 to $150,000 in savings and investments. So let's just stop there for a second, because this is where the disconnect becomes real. If the expectation is around $350,000 and the reality is closer to $120,000, that's a gap of roughly $200,000 to $265,000. And that's not a small difference. That's the kind of number that makes people feel like they started too late, they didn't save enough, or they somehow missed their chance. But here's the part that almost never gets explained properly. That gap doesn't automatically mean people failed. Because what you're really looking at is not one simple financial reality. You're looking at 2 completely different systems being compared to each other. One system is based on ideal assumptions, perfect savings habits, consistent income, no major disruptions. The other system is what real life actually looks like. And once you separate those two, the story behind that $265,000 gap starts to change. So now that we've seen the gap, the real question is, why does it exist in the first place? Because it's easy to look at those numbers and assume people just aren't saving enough. But that's not the full story. First, we have to start with income reality. The average income in your 40s might look solid on paper, but that's before taxes, before housing, before childcare, before everything else that shows up in real life. So when someone says you should be saving 20% of your income, that sounds reasonable in theory, but in practice, there are entire phases of life where that just isn't possible. Second, this stage of life is often the most expensive. Your 30s and 40s aren't just about building wealth. They're also when your expenses peak. You've got housing at its highest levels, kids, healthcare, responsibilities, sometimes even supporting family. So even if your income is higher, your free cash might actually feel lower. And third, this entire system is built on perfect assumptions. It assumes you started saving early, you had no major setbacks, your income grew smoothly, and you consistently invested the whole time. But real life doesn't work like that. People change jobs. They deal with emergencies. They pause contributions. Life happens. So when you compare real life to a system built on perfect conditions, of course there's going to be a gap. But here's the important shift. That gap isn't just about what you did wrong. It's about how the system was designed in the first place. And once you understand that, you stop asking, why am I so far behind? And you start asking a much better question. What actually applies to me? So if you're sitting there thinking, okay, I get it, but what do I actually do now? Let's make this simple. First, stop chasing someone else's number. Your retirement isn't based on a random benchmark, it's based on your lifestyle. What do you actually need per month? What will your basic expenses look like? And what gap do you need to fill? That's your real target. Second, focus on your savings rate, not your past. You can't change when you started, but you can change how aggressively you move forward. Even increasing your savings by 1 or 2% over time can completely shift your future. Third, make your system automatic because consistency beats motivation every time. Set up auto investing, increase contributions gradually, and remove the need to decide every month. And finally, don't try to fix everything overnight. This isn't a 6-month problem. It's a 10 to 15 year trajectory. So instead of asking, am I behind? Start asking, am I moving in the right direction? Because that's what actually determines where you end up. There's something most people don't realize. Being behind isn't permanent. It's just where you are right now. Because 2 people can start at the same point and end up in completely different places, based on what they do next. The one who builds a simple plan, stays consistent, and keeps moving forward, quietly pulls ahead. And the one who keeps comparing to unrealistic benchmarks stays stuck in the same place. So you don't need a perfect number. You don't need a perfect strategy. You just need a direction that actually works for you. Because this isn't about catching up overnight. It's about building momentum over time. So don't ask, am I behind? Ask, what's my next step? Because that one decision can change everything. At the end of the day, this isn't about hitting some perfect number or catching up to anyone else. It's about understanding your situation and making better decisions from here. Because the truth is, most people aren't as far ahead as they seem. And most people who succeed just stay consistent longer than others. So if you're watching this right now, you're already doing something right. Take what you learned, apply even one small change, and give it time to work. Because your future isn't decided by where you are today. It's decided by what you do next. If this video helped you, hit like and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next one.